This conference will now be recorded.
I'd like to call the Copper Township Board of Trustees regular meeting together April 27th, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. Please rise for the pledge if you're able. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. We have a couple guests. In person here, we have representing Service Department, Mr. Blacknick, Chief of Police, Michael Meyer, representing the Fire Department, the Assistant Chief, Keith Moore, Economic Development Director, Loud Klein, our Administrator is Janice Marshall, Trustee Scott Dressler, Fiscal Officer Linda Piper. Virtually, we have Trustee Jim Schulte and myself. Thank you for attending. We'll start with anything from the Board of Trustees. Mr. Schulte, do you have anything?
Nope.
Okay. All right. Inspector, we'll go on to the fiscal officer report.
Okay, very good. Good evening, everyone. First, I'm asking for a motion to approve the Board of Trustees regular meeting minutes of April 13th, 2021.
So moved.
Second.
Any corrections, additions, or comments? Hearing none, I will call for the motion.
I seconded
I'm sorry.
it. You should call for the motion.
Well, call for the vote.
Oh, Dressler, yes.
Fuller, yes.
Schulte, yes.
Thank you. Janet, resolution number, please. 32. Okay, secondly, asking for a resolution approving the purchase orders for health insurance premiums and telephone expenses for the remainder of 2021 as follows. Basic NEO, $19,000. The standard, which is dental insurance, $44,459.21. The standard, which is vision insurance, $5,831.06. The standard life insurance, $13,600. Medical mutual, $926,878.55. AT&T FirstNet, that's for the cellular phones, which is $3,800, and AT&T bandwidth fees of $4,656.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Inspector, call the roll, please.
Trustee Dressler,
Yes.
Trustee Colner,
Yes.
and Trustee Schulte.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. Next, we have Resolution 33, 2021. A resolution approving an amendment to the Certificate of Estimated Resources, whereas the fiscal officer is authorized to repay Fund 1000 General Fund $2,945.41 from Fund 2909, the Ohio Department of Safety Grant, and $17,304 from Fund 2905 2020 Reworks Recycling Grant for advances made to those special revenue funds and anticipation of reimbursement.
So moved, Colner.
Second.
Discussion? Ms. Piper, why did we have to amend the certificate for these?
Well,
These are,
we're cleaning up the certificate.
what was inaccurate on the certificate? What are we cleaning up, as I might?
Well, Ohio Safety Grant was paid,
Okay,
so we have to report that as paid. And also the reworks grant of $17,304 was paid. That will zero out our certificate.
okay. The reason I'm asking is I don't recall doing this in previous years, and we get these two grants every year, or at least we've got them for the last several years.
We get grants throughout the year, yes.
Correct. And the reworks and the public safety grant we got last year, but did not have to amend the certificate for it, is my question.
I have their certificate here, if you'd like to see it.
Okay.
They're showing negatives. We need to repay those, so they're down to zero.
Is this a copy we can keep?
Yeah, you can keep that. I have one for Scott as well.
Okay,
So we just need to clean it up. And I have to get board approval to do that.
So at the end of the year, I think what happened was those advances had not been, the reimbursements had not been received, so the funds couldn't have been repaid. So it shows as a negative balance because those funds owe the general fund,
Mhm.
and you can't spend that money, so it's not available to spend. When you receive the reimbursement, then you are able to repay the general fund, which I believe has already been done, but it hadn't been reported to the county on the certificate. So this is going to be able to report it to the county.
And they meet May, I think it's May 4th. So I want to get
Okay.
this cleaned up.
All right, thank you. Okay. Any further discussion? None. Will you please call the roll?
Trustee Dressler?
Yes.
Trustee Kohler?
Yes.
And Trustee Schulte?
Yes.
Thank you. Just to mention that the February financial statements have been released. I see that Trustee Schulte has not had an opportunity to review them. So I've not asked for them to be accepted until he has a chance. And the March financials are also ready.
When will we get the March
You will
financials?
get them before the end of the week. Just
Okay.
issue that I want to make sure.
Okay. Good. Thank
So we should be good to go then.
All right.
I don't think I have anything else.
Anything further for Ms. Pfeiffer? Okay. Ms. Marshall?
The only item I have tonight is to request an executive session to discuss employment of personnel and benefits of personnel in all.
Assistant Chief Moore, you're up. This is going quick.
Yes, it is.
I can only assume it's because I'm not there, Bruce.
Oh, okay.
Chris isn't here. In Chief Bauer's fashion, I'm going to slow things down a little bit. Chief Bauer sends his regrets. He's still out of town. First thing I have tonight is a motion to accept with regret the resignation of Zachary Devitt as a part-time member of the Copley Fire Department effective April 9th, 2021. Zachary Devitt has chosen to pursue a different part-time career. He's going to go back to school, and he can't do this and go to school at the same time.
Okay.
So moved.
Now, second. Any discussion? Okay, call for the vote.
Dressler, yes.
Colner, yes.
Schulte, yes.
Thank you. Second thing I have is another motion to accept with regret the resignation of Robert Evans as a part-time member of the Copley Fire Department effective April 30th, 2021. Robert's been with us 3 years and did not have a full-time job when he came to us, but since then he has been hired full-time. He's doing very well. He's been there a year and he's got too many different jobs right now. So maybe in the future we'll get him back, but right now he's spread too thin.
So move.
Second.
Any discussion?
Really quickly, Bruce, if I may.
Yes.
Chief Moore, I'm just curious what the impact's going to be on losing 2 part-time firefighters on overtime.
I can tell you that Zachary Devitt has not yet, he had one more shift before he would actually start working regular shifts. So he's not going to make a big impact. Robert Evans.
Hang on, just what he's saying there, Mr. Schulte, is he was still on his probationary training period, so he really hasn't made an impact.
Got it.
Thank you. Robert Evans, yes, we've got to replace him. I mean, and we are continuing to look to hire new part-time paramedics every day in order to do that.
So we had a big push last year, Keith, to keep overtime in the fire and police departments under control. And part of the solution to do that was through some part-time staffing. I'm just curious where our part-time staffing is now versus where it was a year ago. And I realize I'm catching you off guard. You probably don't know that off the top of your head. But if you can just email the board with that information, I'm just curious where we stand.
Okay, I can do that.
That would be helpful.
Yeah, I can't tell you off the top of my head I really can't, but because we're constantly trying to hire new people, and I actually don't know where we stand right now. But
Yeah, just trying to keep Keith, that's all.
I'll get something to you.
Thank you. So did we vote on Robert? We have not. We'll call for the vote for resignation for Robert Evans.
Dressel, yes.
Colner, yes.
Schulte, yes.
Third thing I have is request an executive session to discuss employment of personnel in the fire department.
Okay. Anything for Assistant Chief Moore?
I actually do have two more items.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I have two more items of interest.
Absolutely. Please
If
proceed.
it please the board. The first thing I'll bring up is we've had a change, Knox Boulevard Bridge. We had an issue where we couldn't drive our tanker over it. They wouldn't let us. Since the last meeting, I went down and had our tanker weighed and got a slip on it, paid to have it weighed. With Mark Mitchell, Service Director Mitchell's assistance, we contacted the county engineer, Mr. Hockover, and he reviewed it again, and he has given us permission to take our tanker over the bridge on an emergency basis now. So that's been resolved.
Great. Which
is fantastic news for us. The ladder truck is far exceeds the weight of all the other vehicles, and it's not gonna go over. And the chances that we actually will desperately need the ladder truck over there are really not that great with what's over there now, the other side of the bridge. So that's resolved. Service Director Mitchell was a huge help with that. The second item of interest I have is the Cleveland Maslin Road widening project. Not sure if that's going to be something to discuss later on, but
No, please proceed. We'd like to just hear from that.
Yeah, I went and met with Mr. Mitchell yesterday, our service director. He and I reviewed I had some concerns because we were having difficulty meeting with the Fairlawn service director. So Mr. Mitchell did go and meet with him, express my concerns, and they've been pretty much resolved. I know I just needed some more details, and not a lot, but I understand exactly what they're doing. Our service will be impacted to some degree at times, especially when Station 2 is on a call and Station 1 has to go up there now to the Montrose area, depending on where the call is. But we fully understand what they do, and we'll make the plans to do the best we can with the situation. That's all I have on that.
I did read some of that was going on. There was some question about if emergency apparatus would be able to get through there, and it is not going to be able to get through there, correct?
Well, that's they're saying that there may be a way to get through, but I'm really not going to take my trucks through it. I'm not going to do that. There shouldn't be any need to. I mean, we're going to have to slow to a crawl to move through the construction zone, endanger other people by us moving through a zone that's no vehicles have been through, with people walking around and workers working. We're really just not going to, I mean, it's going to be a state of disrepair.
Right, I read through that, it was like just a very temporary, emergency if you have to go through kind of thing. It wasn't.
Yeah, and we
that well
could
thought
have
out.
to go up there all the time. So we're just going to routinely go around it. We're not going to try to go through that.
But they did want to offer it.
No, which is nice.
Okay. Anything else?
That's it for me.
Anything for Assistant Chief Moore? No? Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We're moving right along, Chief.
There you go. Cruising right along here.
Cruising right along. My first request, I'm seeking permission to purchase a cell phone forensic software called the Data Pilot from Sistine Incorporated in the amount of $2,845. This is an item that we budgeted for in our capital budget. I discussed it previously with you, but essentially we get a tremendous amount of cases in which a cell phone has been used in one manner or another. And this is a portable field unit that the officers can take out and hook up to a cell phone in order to pull data off that phone to assist us with investigation. In the event that we recover a cell phone, excuse me, in a case, we would probably have to get a search warrant before using the device. But the true value of the device is when we get victims or people in the community that have received messages via the various social media sites on their phone. With their permission, we can go in immediately on the scene and pull that data off that we can preserve for criminal cases. And in many cases, this has come up with the schools where there have been discussions between students back and forth. And if we just get one student's phone, they give us permission, we can pull that data off that could assist the case. Now, the price to us is $2,845, but the actual price is a little bit higher than that. The actual price is $4,985, but there is some sort of a group that helps defray the cost. So they're only charging us $2,845 for it.
So
Second, Colner. Any other discussion? It was budgeted, correct?
Yes, it was. We discussed it in more detail.
we did.
Thank you. Ms. Striker, you call the roll, please.
Trustee Dressler?
Yes.
Trustee Colner?
Yes.
And Trustee Schulte?
Yes.
Thank you. In the second item, I'm just seeking permission to accept the third quarter payment of the 2021 DARE grant. As you know, we applied for a DARE grant some time ago for the 2020 to 2021 school year. The total amount of that grant is in excess of $17,000. And this is permission to accept the third quarter of that, which is $4,269.42.
So move, Colner.
Second, Dressler.
Any other discussion? Or any discussion period? Ms. Pfeiffer, call the roll, please.
Trustee Dressler?
Yes.
Trustee Colner?
Yes.
Trustee Schulte?
Yes.
Thank you. And that's all that I have this evening.
Anything for Chief Meyer? Okay.
Thank
sir.
you.
Mr. Blacknick. While you're walking up here, I see the cemetery deed for Mrs. Lynch. Just for the public and for Mr. Schulte, you might not know, Mrs. Lynch served on the fire department's women's auxiliary for many, many years. Her husband was a volunteer firefighter. I played football with their son, and she was a very beloved lunch lady at the high school for decades. Anybody who had her as a lunch lady will tell you she was the nicest thing ever. Should be sorely missed, and my condolences go out to the family.
Yeah, that's,
Good evening. I just have a couple requests. The first one is request approval of a resolution accepting the 2021 and 2022 reworks grant in the amount of $17,307 and authorizing a blanket certificate to cover recycling expenses. And then we use this grant funding to cover the cost of recycle center monitors' wages. And then we also use the remainder for brush collection with mulch makers.
So move, Colner.
second, Dressler.
Any discussion?
I will need to have a fund number from the fiscal officer for that.
We have talked about combining these reworks grants into just one fund, rather than having several of them out there. It's going to be easier to track.
When you have a fund number, let me know and I'll put it on the resolution.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Ms. Pfeiffer, you call the roll, please.
Trustee Dressler,
Yes,
trustee Colner,
Yes.
and trustee Schulte.
Yes.
Okay, second item I have is request a motion to accept $13,400 from govdeals.com for the sale of our 1997 Ford New Holland Burnham. The check arrived Monday, so.
Do we need a resolution for that?
No, it can be a motion.
Yeah, we'll just do a motion. I so move.
second, Dressler.
Any discussion?
Can you tell me that amount again, please?
It's $13,400.
And that was when we sold the burn mower?
Yes, we did that on govdeals.com
Yeah.
and we sold the 1997 Ford Holland Burnham.
We've already received the check.
Correct. Well, it says the check arrived Monday,
Mhm.
this past Monday, so we do have a check. And that's a little slower than usual. Usually we would have received that like last year, but I think it's probably a little slower. But we did receive that.
Any other discussion? I'll call for the vote.
Dressler, yes.
Colner, yes.
Schulte, yes.
And then the third thing is the cemetery deed for the Lynch family.
I didn't mean to steal your thunder with that, but
No, that,
one other thing I missed was she was the mother of Matthew Lynch, the retired
Condolences, yeah.
police lieutenant.
Condolences to Matt.
Yeah. Very nice family.
yes.
Hmm.
And that's all I have.
Anything for Mr. Blacknick? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Klein?
Good evening, everybody. My first request is a resolution approving a blanket certificate in the amount of $1,800 for the repair of streetlights on Flight Memorial Drive. This has been presented to the board previously as a concern for the safety of the employees and visitors in the Montrose area around Flight Memorial Drive. It is also a poor look overall. It's in violation of the property maintenance code in an area that has got fair lawn, bath, very similar commercial development in similar area that is well lit. So it's not a great look to have that on our portion of State Route 18. We've issued violations against the property maintenance code for this. Jeff Newman, our code enforcement officer, and numerous members of the service department have devoted a number of hours to solving this issue, whether it's locating where the issue is with the lights themselves, with the lines underground, the property owners. We've just spent a ton of time trying to get this addressed. We've got a quote from the same company that repaired the Montrose Center sign for this repair. Jeff has also worked tirelessly with the property owners to get them to agree to work with us on finishing this and getting this repair completed. It's obviously it's quite a layered system for who owns the property, who's leasing the land, what business maintains what. It's a very complicated system, and Jeff has devoted quite a bit of time to figuring that out. The issue continues to go on. Everyone seems to keep pointing the fingers at everyone else, and we really just want to get this issue cleaned up from a safety perspective, again, for the residents, for the businesses, and the employees in the area. So again, we have a quote for $1,800 and would like your permission to get this issue resolved as soon as possible.
So move, Schulte.
Second, Dressler.
Discussion. I've got a couple issues. I was speaking to Ms. Marshall about it earlier. So we're going to repair private infrastructure. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. First of all, I don't have an issue. It's a safety issue. I have an issue expending township funds to repair a private infrastructure. And I know you guys have worked tirelessly, and I know that Mr. Newman has been out there spending a lot of hours. There's been complaints. There are younger people who go to and from different buildings, whether employed there. I want it fixed as well. So can we move forward with that fix, but push this cost off onto the taxes like we would for anybody else's? If there was somebody that didn't take care of the yard and we had to go mow it, we can assess them for the mowing.
So I talked to David Firestein, our legal counsel, and asked that question, and he was unsure because of the layers of ownership on these properties, unsure that an assessment would be happening this fall. His suggestion was expend the funds, send an invoice out to the property owners, and hope that they pay it, basically. I think Jeff has spoken to the property owners, or at least the businesses that are there. They all want it repaired. It's a matter of who is supposed to be responsible for it. So I think by sending out an invoice, we will at least trigger the knowledge that it's fixed and you need to pay for it. And then we can work out the legalities of putting an assessment. But at this time, there isn't a surefire path toward assessing. But there would be, of course, sending invoices from the fiscal office.
So is this an issue that the landlord is saying, no, it's in the agreement for the person leasing to fix it? And the person leasing or renting is saying, no, it's the landlord's responsibility? Is that the issue here?
Essentially, yeah.
Okay, so when we send out a invoice, they're gonna mail that invoice back between the two of them for a while as well.
Yeah, and again, hopefully seeing the cost would, they would understand. They've agreed verbally to Jeff that they believe the light should be repaired, but
Who said that? The owner?
both the tenants and then the basically who owns the ground. They've agreed, but
Right,
they don't think
they're not agreed on who should pay for it.
correct. But I mean, hopefully if the property, there's 3 properties that it spans, the lights span 2 properties, so you would split the cost, $1,800 across the 2 properties, and sharing the cost of that. So as Ms. Marshall alluded to, I think if we approve this, we would still pursue getting the township reimbursed at all aspects as we would with any kind of funds that we've
Same
expended.
on Montrose West, it was up to the property owners, they knew they were paying at some point, so just to work it out.
It's a unique circumstance, again, as township authority too versus municipality authority to enforce code enforcement violations. So it's a different circumstance, as you mentioned, from a tree falling on a building or something like that. So we've been evaluating it from all different angles and definitely trying to figure out a way to recoup those funds that if we were to expend them.
So let me ask this question. If we send them an invoice and they don't pay, what recourse do we have then?
I would defer to Mr. Firestein on that to eventually see what.
Is he on? I don't see him on.
He sent a message that he would be on virtually, but would be late. So I don't see him on tonight either. If he comes on, we can certainly ask him. But I believe in the conversation we had last evening, he was saying that this is something he would be pursuing, but in deference to getting it fixed and getting those lights and preserving the safety of the people that are going through that area in the dark, to expend the funds, and in the meantime, he would work it out.
With that, would you gentlemen mind tabling this until later this evening, until Mr. Firestein comes on? You can ask the question.
That's fine by me, Bruce. I guess I go back to a comment that Loudon alluded to, and that is, what would the answer be different if we were a home rule township?
Would it be?
I'd have to take a look at that, and my first inclination is no, but I
We
think
can ask Mr. Firestein
Yeah,
that too when he comes on.
I don't know how that relates to I know we can levy fines on property maintenance if we have home rule, the property maintenance.
This is different.
violations,
We're
but-
actually fixing it.
And that's where I'm going. We could, if we had the ability to levy fines, we would have a kitty built up for things like this that would be taken care of out of the kitty as opposed to spending general fund money. That's my thought, but let's wait for David.
We do
Okay.
have $225 sitting in a property maintenance code fund from previous fines that were issued and not returned. That could be used for this as well.
Well, if you folks don't mind, wait until Mr. Firestein comes on. We'll ask that question. I can tell you I'm likely to vote for it either way because of the safety issues, but I would like to ask if we can get our funds back.
No, I understand, and I would hope we could. Again, I'm not an attorney, but there is a section of the property maintenance code that relates to lighting of commercial properties.
Mhm.
So this is a violation without a
Okay.
doubt. So hopefully we'd be able to recoup that.
Great, okay.
I
We'll
just
just
have,
table that then, thank you.
okay, I just have a couple quick items that we've
Excuse me
discussed.
1 minute. Do we have to vote to table? We essentially did, I guess. It's okay.
Just don't call for the question.
Okay,
We're just not gonna vote yet.
nice.
Same meeting.
Yep, okay, thank you.
Okay, just 2 or 3 quick things that we've discussed at board meetings previously. I did a presentation several meetings ago about the enterprise zone program. I believe I sent some communication to the board of the questions that we had raised at that meeting. I am working on trying to set up a meeting with some of the communities that utilize the Summit County's or enterprise zone program, just to see how their experience has been with the program, any many issues they've faced, or they're supportive of it. Because there's also a program out there that's widely used in the state that's a community reinvestment area, so a CRA, which is also a tax abatement program that we would be able to set up. And so I really have been in a lot of conferences and seminars, and it goes back and forth on what's the best fit for your community. So I would like to do a little internal evaluation and make sure that if we do pursue the enterprise zone program, it's right for us versus the community reinvestment area. So hopefully I'll have that meeting with the adjacent community in Summit County, get their feedback, and also weigh the 2 options and report back to the board. But I want you to know I'm actively continuing to pursue that. If you have any questions that have come up about that program, let me know, but I just didn't want that to fall to the wayside. Okay, as for water and sewer, not much movement aside that the last meeting we approved the contract with CESO. We have a meeting scheduled tomorrow, which is kind of a kickoff internal meeting, just to get a game plan of the next steps for the Sunset Drive improvements. So we will be meeting obviously with county agencies and department heads and continuing to move that project along, and I will keep the board apprised of all that. But that is moving forward, and we are moving forward with CESO. And
With
last,
that, I'm sorry, let me
Yeah.
interrupt you about that. With that, we still have some open letters from property owners about being on the JED. And I don't know if we want to reach out to those folks and tell them we're still in this process. I suspect I would prefer if we reached out to them with a letter telling them that this is a priority for us as well. We're trying the best we can to navigate through uncharted waters to make this happen.
yeah, I'd be happy to put some.
We haven't responded to them at all, and I feel remiss of in doing so.
I'd be happy to put some draft language together,
If you would,
or
please.
response, and we can recount some of the efforts that have occurred in the last 7 or 8 months that we've been trying to work on, some of the projects, the investment the township has done in the planning process. So
At some point, we'll have to decide what we're going to do with those. And I don't want it to go much longer. So
yeah, we can get a response going.
personally, I don't want to go much longer. All right,
Sounds good.
thank you.
And lastly, just a last meeting plug on the Arbor Day stuff. We have got events here at Town Hall from 3 to 5, some tree giveaways. And also Saturday at the park, there'll be some giveaways, a little contest we've got going on, scavenger hunt. That will be at the park from 11 to 2. If anybody's listening, feel free to contact me with any questions. We'll be putting information out on social media, all keeping that out there.
As I mentioned to you earlier, I cannot make the Friday 3 to 5. I've got a prior engagement, but I will see you Saturday.
That's totally fine. Yep, either event works.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else for Mr. Klein? All right, thank you, sir.
Good. Thank you.
Any old business? None? Any new business?
I have two items of new business. One being a discussion on our issues with food trucks. This is kind of somewhat of a new phenomenon in the township. We dealt with it a little bit last year, and it's increased this year as far as regulation and permitting food trucks in the township. We've had a number of different requests. We have a couple requests for more of a stationary food truck on private property. We've had a request for multiple food trucks visiting a particular neighborhood on a rotating business and so forth. We've had a couple food trucks on business properties that are open to the public, that at the invitation of the business owner, but available to the public. We've had some food trucks that are hired for graduation parties or weddings or private parties that are for a specific group of invitees. So we're looking at all of the issues. Some of the vendors that have been requesting permits have gotten some frustration as far as the fact that the transient vendor permits and the process that they go through for transient vendors is not as applicable to food trucks as it is to door-to-door solicitors. So the Chief Meyer and myself and Loudon and Beth Sadal and David Firestein have been kind of dealing with this piecemeal as far as trying to come up with some better regulations that are more pertinent to food trucks. In your packet, I included an article that is pertinent to food trucks. It talks about different things that you need to think about when you're putting together a process or guidelines and programs for the food trucks. So there's some good things to think about in there, and there are some particular questions that we as a township would need to answer, and perhaps it would be also recommended to inquire from our residents as to their wishes and how they view food trucks. So there's considerations as to how long they can operate in the township, where they can operate in the township, how many days are they able to be in one spot, how long is their permit for. So there's a number of questions that we need to review. So I would just suggest tonight, I don't have a guideline as to what all the different things we want to include, but I would encourage you to maybe read that article and get some thoughts, and then get with me as to what your thoughts are as far as some of the questions that are brought up in that article.
Okay.
We do have a number of food trucks that have been permitted. The Ice Bucket has been issued a permit, and it is located on the food truck owner's private property. Southern Thing has also been issued a permit. It most recently was at Graves Lumber this past week and was open to the public. We have Penguin Ice Cream, who has also been issued a permit. 211 Kitchen is we're waiting for their permit fees. And Dine and Dash just was approved and issued a permit.
But they never paid.
Dine and Dash.
Kidding.
No, they did pay.
Sorry.
So we have multiple food trucks that have permits and are out.
Guys,
in the
wake up out
township.
there. Come on. I just try to get one joke in. It took, Keith was the only one.
I got it, Scott, but Bruce is running a great meeting. We're only 40 minutes in. I don't even want to mess with the flow here.
So I just want to bring that up, though, because the vendors are concerned about paying the $100 every 90 days. There's some considerations as to how they can operate, and they've been asking multiple questions. So it is something we need to take a look at. We've also contacted other townships, other cities, looked at their regulations and their permitting process. It really is all over the board. So it really is dependent on what we as a board would decide, what you as a board would decide as far as how to regulate them. So that's something
What's
we'll
the,
need to be considering.
We received an email, the owner of the Penguin.
Yes.
Do you want to read that email as
Yeah,
correspondence?
I think, or just summarize it, just to acknowledge, because he's a resident.
Yeah.
My phone died,
It is,
so I was
it
gonna read it, but
is correspondence via email. So
Right.
let's go.
no,
ahead.
he makes the same points that were brought up in the information Janice has given us, because it's kind of it's become a trend over the years for the mobile trucks, and then the pandemic kind of increased some of that and decreased on the traffic. But, you know, we discussed it at our last meeting, and, you know, whose property they're on. Probably one of the main things is, you know, or if they, you know, you want to make sure they have, if they're, you know, cleaning up their trash, obviously they're all aware of that situation, but for the public to participate, and then having furniture, and then the competition, you know, where they're at, where they're set up. They're not regulated zoning wise. Is it fair to the restaurant that's next door? There's some benefit in actually having more people in the same location, but that, you know, that's arguable. So it is a legitimate concern on how we go forward regulating that, because people do like it. It's become popular, and it's going to continue to be there. And we just want to make sure everyone's treated fairly in the process. And there are a variety of ways that it's been approached. It just kind of, initially there weren't a lot of them. They got lumped into the transit vendor, but in regard to the increase in use, we just want to make sure that going forward, we don't have to
Ms. Marshall mentioned.
continue to address, and I'm talking as long as I can while Janice tries to look at the letter, but I'm kind of running out of things to say. So
think
anybody else have something?
I do.
How, are you getting close, Janice?
I am.
Okay, thank you.
What I was going to say is, Ms. Marshall said earlier that it's, you know, we've given out several of these so far, but food trucks for our area is still fairly new. So that's not an excuse for not being prepared, but we're going to become prepared.
And unfortunately, that was Loudon's email I had found.
Sorry, I read it before I came in, and my phone died. So I mean, I had already read it, and I was pulled it up to read it, but didn't bring out my charger this time.
Oh, thank you.
I have it here.
Yeah. All right.
It was sent yesterday.
This is Travis Monty Bromer. He's owner of Penguin Ice Cream LLC and a Copley resident. He says, I understand the Board of Trustees have been reconsidering the current process for transit vendor permits in regard to mobile food businesses. I'm an owner of a small local food business and wanted to offer a couple of thoughts and suggestions from a permit holder. He is a current permit holder. He recently completed the permit with us, and he's operated all over Northeast Ohio. And he said in many different cities and townships. He says what we've already mentioned, that the current application wasn't intended for food businesses, but more for the transit vendors. He says that it'll be, if food vendors are, the licensing impacts them, but they're actually vehicles and not fixed buildings, obviously. The application typically is single page, doesn't require the same background check. He's suggesting the county health inspection covers most of the information we need in that type of situation. He says the other costs for food vendors, he says some of them are $50 or less and good for a year. Our application is $100 and for 90 days. So Travis is making obviously some good points here, and we'll consider those. He says he appreciates our time and consideration as a Copley resident and business owner. He'd happy to discuss it further. So thank you, Travis. Appreciate that. And
We might be able to reach out to him as well as you go through this process, as he may have a lot of experience in this and have other vending licenses from other communities that could be helpful.
yeah, here's your phone. So appreciate that, and we'll just come up with a fair best case scenario, and if we have to tweak it again, we'll see, but all those things are being considered, and we should have something to.
So we'll read this, what you gave us tonight,
So-
and are you gonna come up with a draft, or the two of you, or the three of you gonna come up with a draft?
Yeah, I
And
think
then present it
between,
to us?
yes,
And then we'll be somewhat educated by reading this article and
yes.
maybe
And
some others as well.
when you read it, if you have some specific thoughts about specific things you'd like included, then please feel free to let us know prior to us making the draft.
Sure.
You know, if you feel strongly about it only being certain hours or not after dark or not on Sundays or whatever, let us know those items that are particular and we can include them.
The only thing I would ask about is how does this impact when you have let's say one of these, and Chief Meyer brought it up a couple meetings ago, they pull up on a street corner, they're not paying real estate taxes, they're not buying several $100,000 in equipment, a building and so on. They pull up in a somewhat expensive vehicle and then move on to the next place. Is that something we probably can't regulate, or I don't know how that fits into how our
Yeah,
licensing?
Well, Bruce, you're hitting right on the head of something that's on the back of my mind. And that is, we have to protect our brick and mortar commercial enterprises. And it's just not right for somebody to pull up in a truck and negatively impact a brick and mortar restaurant or establishment that's here in town. A brick and mortar establishment is paying property taxes, is paying for the police and fire protection that we provide, and the streets and the service department provides. And somebody that's a transient vendor that's comes and goes, that's different. So there's definitely a place in our township for transient food trucks. But Janice, to address you specifically, I always want to protect our brick and mortar establishments over these transient food trucks. So as you're drafting language, please keep that in the back of your head. That's what I really want to see.
right. And one thing that this article does discuss is some communities have food truck rallies and they pick one night particular and they have a food truck rally and that's their answer to allowing food trucks in the township. It's a one specific time and then they regulate them otherwise.
And we
So-
can do that at the circle.
Yeah, there's different ways of handling the issue by, offering the ability to them to do business in the township, but also protecting our brick and mortar establishments and our businesses.
Well, the other part, it goes over, you mentioned that Brown and Graves had a food truck, so on private property, it's like bringing in a private caterer. So that's a gray area. A caterer, you can cater food for everyone at your company and they bring in the food and it's prepared somewhere and it's brought in. So it's kind of, if it's in the truck outside or if it's brought inside the building there. I mean, that's kind of a gray area.
Yeah, some
But
brick
you know, Scott, if it's serving the public, then it at least has to be zoned appropriately on the property in which it's parked.
Exactly.
Okay.
But I mean, for them to say, that's the gray area. So someone brings in a food truck for the employees. I work somewhere where they would bring in food trucks, a few places for the employees. And, whether or not they say it's open to the public, people, they don't know, people show up or come and go to that
nobody
food truck.
polices that either.
That's a gray area. That's all. It's someone, bringing in, they're basically catering. Sometimes they're paying for it, sometimes they're not. So that's the part it's the gray area.
Okay. Well, like Mr. Schulte said, and Mr. Dresser mentioned, I too would prefer, or will ask you to keep it in the back of your mind and see if it's possible to address protecting those in some manner, the brick and mortar establishments in some manner.
Thank you. The second item of new business I have is in regard to a purchase that has been made through Swisscom. So that's our joint dispatch center that we are in partnership with the cities of Barberton and Norton and also Springfield Township. This purchase was made for the IT department in which Springfield does not participate. So this is with the cities of Barberton, Norton, and Copley Township. So there was a need to replace servers, and I can't get any more technical than that, but the equipment was to replace these servers. At the time, the Swisscom board was discussing the best way to purchase those, and it was decided that they would enter into a 5-year lease purchase agreement with Dell Financial Services. So we received a quote. The quote is for about $42,000 per year for 5 years. The quote, however, was written with the Copley Township as the purchaser. So there was a question that was raised up by one of our other community partners, and that was if the Swiss COG was able to assume debt, whether or not they were able to lawfully participate in a lease purchase agreement. The attorneys for the Swiss COG looked at the issue and have determined that the Swiss COG is not permitted to enter into lease purchase agreements. So the issue stays currently today is that we have the equipment in our possession. We have a quote that was signed, written to Copley Township. We have no contract yet as to the lease purchase agreement. So nothing has been signed, but it has been the quote for the lease purchase price per year has been based on Copley Township being the purchaser. Now that we have discovered that the Swiss COG is unable to enter into a lease purchase agreement, it seems as though we have just two options. Swiss COG can purchase the servers outright today for the $196,000 that they cost. Net 30, pay the bill, and we own them. Otherwise, Swiss COG can enter into a rental agreement whereby they pay a rental fee 5 years, and at the end of those 5 years, they're in the same position they are today. They would either need to re-rent them or they would need to purchase something outright. If Copley Township stays as the purchaser on the agreement, in talking with our partners, they have said that they would pay Copley Township their portion of the cost. Copley Township would be the purchaser, make the annual payment, be reimbursed by the cities of Barberton and Norton according to the agreement that is being constructed and created. And at the end of those 5 years, then Copley Township would donate the equipment back to Swisscom. So in order for all of this to happen, those are our three choices. If we want to pursue the agreement that's in place now, the lease purchase agreement, it would be necessary for Copley Township to be the purchaser. The agreement between the cities of Barberton and Norton has not been constructed yet. It has not been created. So I don't have that agreement in front of us to be able to approve or disapprove. However, if we could have the discussion and I could know what direction you are leaning toward, once we got that agreement, then we could again pursue and approve and go through the process. The sticky point here is that we have the equipment. Now it hasn't been installed. It's waiting to be installed. So we as Copley Township need to decide whether or not we would be willing to be the purchaser on the lease purchase agreement and follow through with the agreement coming back from the cities of Barberton and Norton, or if we are going to put it back on Swisscog and have them rent it, purchase it outright, or have another entity be the purchaser.
So Janice, I know that was the advice we got, that the Council of Governments cannot take on debt. I'm still struggling believing that's accurate. And I think to all the leases that Swisscog has entered into since its creation, what I'm hearing is that we've been violating the law for 10 years. There's something fundamentally different when you're doing a lease purchase option versus issuing bonds. And I would agree that a council of governments cannot issue bonds or debentures and take on that kind of debt. But equipment financing is fundamentally different than issuing debt. So my second point is, I think of all the joint dispatch centers that are out there right now, Summit County, the Southern Summit County one just forming, are they buying all of their equipment with cash? I can't believe that's the case. I think we have bad advice on that legal point.
Well, let me ask another question. I can't speak to if that's accurate or not, but if we take one of the three, I would assume that renting would not be advantageous. What is the interest rate on the lease purchase? Or is there an interest rate?
I don't have that information in front of me.
So if it's a 5% or something similar to what we buy police cars or fire trucks with, maybe we would want to pay it outright. It'd be beneficial, and then, or just have each community pay for it outright now. Is that possible?
So the budget for Swisscog has included the $42,000 annual payment. It does not include the $196,000 purchase outright. I don't know if the other communities are in a position that they would be able to come up with that cash now. I do know that the Swisscom board and the Swisscog board considered its financing options, looking at term of the lease, percentage interest rate of the lease, and determined that this was the route they wanted to go. So that's how it's been written up. Now we can obviously, as purchaser, go back and look at those items and renegotiate perhaps, although it was done with the idea that Copley was the purchaser. So they're looking at our credit rating in order to make those offers, those options.
So I'm guessing this is a time sensitive issue. Is that correct?
It is.
All right.
I'm sorry, Bruce. There's something else that's in the back of my mind. You know, we've talked before, this board has talked about doing a pretty aggressive infrastructure spend and actually floating debt out there. And I like the posture the township is in right now to do that, in that we don't have any debt. So when we go issue our first piece of debt, that just sounds better that we have no current debt. If we take on a $200,000 lease on behalf of somebody else, all of a sudden we have debt. And I don't know if it fundamentally changes our cost of money to go do an infrastructure spend or not, but it can't help.
I have to say, I too, I would rather not purchase it for the other communities than have them pay us. I think we have a couple options, just everybody, all the communities involved in Swisscog, one, just pay it outright, and I can't speak to, I don't know, I would ask Ms. Pfeiffer as well, can we afford to make our portion of that, which is, I'm guessing $50,000 or $60,000 right now.
What if they,
Okay, so we'd ask,
so what if they don't do it as a lease, as debt? In reference to Jim's question, what if they just say, you know, here's the deal, and you're gonna make payments over, you know, this amount of time, but not issue it as a debt agreement?
Then it would be issued as a technology rotation agreement. So that means that you're renting it and you rotate it. After 5 years, you would rotate new technology in. So it's like a rental agreement.
That's not as economic, Scott, because the rent would just keep going after the 5 years.
We signed a deal to pay it off, but Swisscom has budgeted it for a 5-year deal. So I don't know, obviously they don't want to, the company doesn't want to do it that way, but then the board will have to, I say we go back to each community and then it seems to be, we're looking at, we need to just, the three communities get together and figure out how to pay for it. Ask them if we can do it in 2 payments this year and in 9 months, starting next year, just split it in half kind of thing. So if that makes
Well, they
it,
can't enter in debt, so I don't think they would be.
it's not, you don't have to look at it as debt, it's just a purchase order and we don't have to pay the other part till.
Oh, you could do,
I don't know, I'm asking because then we pay, so if we split, so we each pay 30 some grand this year and 30 some grand next year, and then we're done.
The concept that Swisscog cannot enter into a lease is beyond me. I still believe it's inaccurate. And we should investigate other council of governments to see if they're taking on debt.
The problem with Swisscog is it was created through the state, is it was a, these are unique. And we could actually apply to the state and say, we would like in our bylaws, it's just, I think in a matter of, in the bylaws to say that we're allowed to have debt. And then the state can, can approve that is I think another option and say, basically, Jim, you're saying, why shouldn't we be allowed to? And that I think could be a request through the creation and changing the bylaws of Swisscog to say, yes, we forgot to put that in there, that we could enter into lease agreements. That could be our solution.
I'm in favor of doing that, Scott. I just can't believe that the council of governments that Green is putting together right now, that they're going to buy all of their dispatch equipment outright. They're certainly going to take on a lease purchase option.
well,
Well, and we just, I think if we can go back with our legal and say, we need to add that into what's the authority of Swisscog, and then it's regulated through the state, and it was created as a new entity. And I think let's just pursue that initially. And
So I think David Firestein is on the call now, and the law director from the city of Norton and the law director from the city of Barberton are the ones who have done this research and have come up with their answer. Also, it was brought to our attention by the finance director at the city of Norton, who is a auditor in her previous life. So David, I don't know if you could contact Lisa Miller and Justin Markey and find out their reasoning or their theories behind why they agree with Ms. Keener from Norton.
Yeah, I could reach out to start with Lisa Miller and ask her for the basis of their opinion on that. I haven't looked at it myself, but the Council of Governments being a statutory creature, as much as Trustee Schulte is shocked by it, it might be, it may be the fact that they can't borrow. But I can ask.
Yeah, and David, it's different than issuing debentures or bonds. This is equipment lease. So I think there's, I just wonder if it's getting lost in the language in the way it's written. I could be wrong, but for clarity, for your purpose, Janice, my opinion, this trustee here does not want to put Copley Township in the middle of this. Either Swisscog leases it or Swisscog buys it. It has nothing to do with Copley.
I tend to agree with that as well.
or they'll have to give it back.
Right. So we already questioned, Mr. Firestein is going to find out why the other attorneys came up with that ruling or that opinion. In the meantime, can you get the lease purchase agreement numbers?
I have it in my computer. I can send it to you.
Well, it might be as simple as each entity buy it today.
I have the price of what it would cost to pay.
But how does that compare to the lease agreement? If the lease agreement is 0% interest, then it makes absolute sense to try and get the lease agreement rectified and go out over 5 years.
Well, it's about 42,000 for 5 years, so that's about 200 some thousand already. So that's more than the purchase price.
42,000. Let me do the quick math here. Bear with me a minute.
42 times 5, 210.
Are you doing math, Bruce?
Yeah, no, I'm not, but thank you for, I'm trying to do the percentages over the time.
What they say, it's 196.
Okay, it's just about 7%. So they're probably charging us or right around 2% a year, or a little under 2% a year. So at 2% a year, probably very advantageous to do the lease, but probably splitting hairs now.
Well, I said we just,
I don't think I didn't take note that the accountant was firing off numbers to the firemen again.
So for Janice's perspective though, so that she has some clairvoyance, Bruce and Scott, how do you feel about Copley Township being in the middle of this purchase and then leasing it or renting it to Swiss Cog?
no,
I'm not in favor.
Not in
Okay.
agreement. So that's why we're discussing what our options might be. And David is, his point, that's the decision. It's statutory, and the state said that this entity doesn't, in their mind, qualify to borrow money, especially that, and because then that brings into, are we a taxing authority? Swisscog individually, could they levy a tax to pay for a joint dispatch? So, those kind of things are discussed at different levels. So maybe the county has that authority or dispatch. I don't know. They're kind of a new animal that have come into play, and they're getting bigger and bigger. So they are, as Jim mentioned, going to have, these large, that's one of the reasons to do it, these large IT expenses, and, how you budget and split those up. Those normally, a lot of those are on those, it's a multi-year lease plan, but it's not a, it's not a 30-year bond or something, 5-year deal. So that's going to come into play. So I think we will work something out, but yeah, I'm not in favor of the township funding.
No. Never mind.
Thank you for agreeing.
Anything else, Ms. Marshall?
No.
Was that,
I'm doing
I know
new
it's rough,
business.
I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
With Mr. Firestein on the call now, I'd like to go back to the resolution that we tabled. Mr. Firestein?
Yes, sir.
We tabled a resolution. Let me get back to that. Mr. Klein has brought to our attention numerous times about the lighting situation down on Flight Memorial Drive, and the need to do $1,800 in repair to get the lighting infrastructure up and going. It has been determined, we do know that it is private infrastructure. It is a property maintenance code violation, but the multi-layered system down there is making it difficult for anybody to own up to paying for it. So to alleviate the safety issue, Mr. Klein has rightfully asked the board to fund the $1,800, and then we're discussing about how we can get those funds back. Ms. Marshall mentioned that you had stated that simply invoicing them might be the rectification, but if they don't pay after invoicing, what can we do then? And that's my question.
Yeah, I've spoken with Loudon about this and Jeff Newman and Janice, and I'm in agreement with Loudon's strategy that I think it needs to get handled now, in that it poses a potential safety risk. It's been debated for a period of time now, but it's a situation that is unique to that property in that area. I don't think that it doesn't have the same look or feel like we're replacing parking lot lights of a private business. These lights light up a public roadway, and it's just through past planning and development that those lights have ended up on private property rather than in a right of way. So that all being said, I do think that a good course of action would be to go ahead and spend the money, get it done, and then go back and invoice them. I feel relatively optimistic without a lot of basis for feeling so, but I feel relatively optimistic that we'll be able to get these entities to come forward and pay a bill when presented. And if they don't, there's limited rights that we have in the revised code. One that I looked at, I was kind of trolling through on Sunday night trying to find ourselves a foothold, and there is a basis in there that the board could declare. And it's funny, it says, the board could declare a fence, a post, a pole, a rock, or vegetation or any other object that obstructs or interferes with a township road to be a nuisance. And so I would submit that a series of lights that are out would also constitute a nuisance. So that would be a fallback position. But I think between those two options, we ought to be able to recover this money. And so rather than going down a delayed path of declaring it a nuisance, pursuing them, prevailing, and then ultimately fixing the lights because it's a public health and safety issue, I would opt for going ahead and taking care of it now. I don't think any court would fault us for doing that. Take care of it now and then pursue them after the fact.
That answered my question. Did Mr. Schulte, Mr. Dressler, any questions?
No, I'm okay with it.
Okay.
Fix the lights and then we'll take it the next step, whatever happens there. It's not like it's $100,000.
Great.
Listen to the advice of your attorney.
And I think if there's any concerns from using the expense of the tax dollars for this repair, we'd be happy to educate anybody on the timeline, the investment. This wasn't like we saw the lights, let's come to the board and have them pay for it. We've done an extreme amount of due diligence between all the departments to try and get this success. In all manners of proposals.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. We've had multiple discussions. Any other discussion on it? Ms. Piper, will you call the roll?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, but I can hardly hear you.
Is that better?
Yes.
Trustee Schulte. I have my mic.
You voted 4 times. Are you voting ahead for the next one?
Maybe it depends what comes up.
So we went through old business, new business. We went back to the table vote. Any other new business or correspondence?
I have one letter of correspondence from the engineer's office regarding stormwater management facilities inspection. Dear Township trustees, the Summit County engineer has renewed our contract with the consulting firm of Emerald Environmental to assist us with performing vegetation mitigation of the detention basins within the assessed subdivision in townships in District 2, south of State Route 18. These detention basins are located outside the roadways, within easements behind homes in the subdivisions. Accordingly, it will be necessary for Emerald Environmental employees to enter the portion of the home's properties covered by easements in order to observe the current field conditions and perform vegetation mitigation at these detention basins. Emerald Environmental employees will carry full personal identification and a copy of this letter. The work in your township is scheduled to take place between May 1st, 2021 and November 30th, 2021. If you have project concerns or would like additional information on the details of the project, please contact me, David Koontz.
Okay.
So I will send that out to the dispatchers as well, so that they're aware of if they get calls from our residents.
Chief Meyer has a copy as well.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other correspondence? None, that was it, Ms. Murphy?
Yes.
That's it, okay. Any business from the floor? Mr. Daniel? Would you please come up to the mic?
Good evening. I've got two things. And the first one, my number two thing was Mr. Loudon mentioned about home rule. So I'm going to ask what's happened to the home rule discussion to put it on the ballot, I believe, as I recall, over a year ago, 2 years.
That is correct. That is 2 years ago. When it came up on it, we said we'd address it in a year. And when we did address it and postponed it again.
Okay.
So that was the last discussion on it. There is some issues that need to be rectified in the township, and it seems that home rule might be the only way we can. We are actually, my personal feeling on it was the higher revised code looked like there was some pending legislation at the state level that was going to make townships with 5,000 persons or more automatically become home rule. There were some discussions about that. So we didn't think it would, personally, I thought we would just wait and see if the state was going to mandate it. But that has not happened yet. So we might have to readdress that.
Okay.
So I guess that was the best I could do to tell you. We did postpone it. My reasoning for postponing is to see what the state was going to mandate.
Okay. I do remember that. Year and a half.
Probably so, yeah.
Okay. My purpose tonight is, my address 1493 Cloverfield Drive. I know what the rule is.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't ask for it.
And I'm up here regarding our estate down here. Carl Drive primarily goes from Copley Road to Hammond. Over the last year and a half, I've done a lot of walking, mainly in our allotment down to Park. And I think that you wouldn't remember. I remember you probably remember maybe 6 or 8 years ago. We was up here, other neighbors talking about the traffic.
I lived on the corner
Yeah, I
of
know you
Carl
lived on the
on
corner.
Sunnyfield.
But the traffic, just they blow through the stop signs or roll. I won't say that's wrong, but they do roll through the stop signs, and that's not it. It's the speed. That's a 25-mile-per-hour road all over that lot. Carl Drive, Centerview Drive are prone for cut throughs, as we call them, from Copley Road to South Cleveland Road and vice versa, morning and night. And of course, that's where the speed comes up. About 2 years ago, I asked Mark Mitchell and Chief Meyer to install a speed detector sign. And they did at the end of Cloverfield and Carl, where it dead ends. And I mean, they may have slowed down a few cars, but then they sped up on the other side of it. What I'm proposing, and I've talked to several neighbors down there, is there's a stop sign here at Cloverfield, or Sunnyfield, I'm sorry, North Sunnyfield, and a stop sign where Carl dead ends into Hammond. My street, Cloverfield, dead ends into Carl down here. And we have a stop sign that way. I'm asking for consideration of putting a stop sign on Carl Drive, northbound on going up from Hammond to Sunnyfield and southbound side, creating a three-way stop. Cloverfield, dead ends into Carl, right down here.
All right, well, we
Now,
can have
That's not a precedent because Hammond dead ends into Centerview, which is a three-way stop. It's always been a three-way stop as long as I lived there. Several years ago, you created, I believe, three-way stop streets, 3 of them, in the allotment across from the high school. So it's not setting a precedent, but the intent was more of a traffic calming.
Oh, we can
We can
consider,
certainly look at that. We can,
we'll
we can ask
discuss it with the,
the service director and police chief. I do know at one time, and I don't know if this still holds true, when you install stop signs in township roads, you have to be able to show that it's not for speed control. If you stick a stop sign up, the Fairlawn got into this issue on Elgin. If you install signs just for speed control, they have to be not legal. I'm sorry.
right. So we can have the county engineer look at it.
Okay.
Bruce and Mr. Daniels, this is Jim Schulte. At last meeting, we asked the service director, Mark Mitchell, to look at traffic tables, to installing tables on roads that are cut-throughs. Now, Mark isn't here this evening to report back, but we're waiting for a report back on that cost. And that might be a solution in your neighborhood if we put in some traffic calming tables.
Yeah, I saw that article.
There's 2 articles in Beacon Journal, and I've been working on this for about 3 months. I contacted the neighbors down there, and you talk about a safety issue. Between South Sunnyfield, or North Sunnyfield, and Hammond Drive, going down that 2-block area, basically, I'm counting up school children, grade school and middle school. We have 15 of them along that road. And then, of course, across from us, on Cloverfield, they have 2 toddlers. They just moved in. So I'm putting that all, throwing those 2 in there. But we got 15 children down there. Again, grade school up to middle school.
Mr. Daniel, I certainly don't want to cut you off, and I'm not meaning to do so. But if you're trying to give us more information to sell us on it, I don't think you need to do that.
Well, that's much education.
Right. So I think I think that my opinion is, and I think I'm hearing my colleagues' opinions, is we will do some sort of traffic control down there if it's legal to do so.
Yeah. This article here, yes, and Mr. Schulte. There's another, I got another paper about that, and they are going forward. They think that's apparently worthwhile. And I think it's temporary. I think they take them out in wintertime, do they not?
That's correct.
Oh, okay. So anyhow, that's my request.
Thank you. It's well heard, and thank you very much for bringing it to our attention. We do have other areas that we periodically, I walk down Paxton and it gets bad, and then they put one of those speed limit signs on the post there, and it calms people down, it slows people down for a little bit, and then it goes away, and people get in the habit of inching a little faster, So we're well aware of this. It's an issue with many places, and we're looking at other issues. And I did not consider Carl being cut through, although it probably is. So it needs to. I didn't think about it because I don't travel down it very often. But with you bringing it to our attention, we will add that to our list.
Okay.
It's absolutely a cut through, Bruce, and a traffic speed table would help. If I may, Mr. Daniels, before you leave, you mentioned home rule. What's your opinion on Copley adopting home rule? Are you in favor or against that?
At this point, I lean towards home rule. There's one point in there I didn't agree with.
You want to expound on that? What didn't you agree with?
we, in a home rule, you have you have options to hire, you have to hire an engineer or somehow have an engineer. That's all right, may or may not. Why, there's some duplication there between township having an engineer, highway engineer. We pay taxes on county engineer. I'm not too.
Under the home rule, though,
The other
you-
one is the zoning building inspector.
Building inspector, yes.
No, building inspector. I would disagree, definitely disagree with that.
With having a building inspector?
And we do have a lawyer, we retained a lawyer out in this township for years. So I don't think that would be an issue.
Okay. I appreciate your opinion, and I would like to talk to you at some time. I won't be able to this evening because one of the reasons I was in favor of home rule was having the building inspector, but I would like to explain that to you why.
Okay, okay. See if you can-
Thank you, Mr. Daniels.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Sure.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you.
Any other, there's nobody? Yes, good to have you. Nobody else from the floor here, nobody else at the floor, sir. So I will entertain a motion to go in executive session to discuss employment in all offices and departments. And executive, it's all, so it covers the fire department as well. So that's all we have.
Wasn't theirs employment?
Yeah, fire department was employment, personnel in the fire department, and for Ms. Marshall was discussion of employment in all offices and departments
Benefits.
and benefits.
So moved, Jim.
Schulte made the motion, seconded by Mr. Dressler. Any discussion? Ms. Piper, you call the roll, please?
Trustee Dressler?
Yes.
Trustee Colner?
Yes.
And trustee Schulte?
Yes.
We'll take a 5-minute recess and meet back here in just a few minutes. Thank you.
This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, we're back public, and as Ms. Piper has left, we will need to elect a secretary pro tem. I nominate Ms. Marshall.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Jim, was that yours?
I'll say
Okay. Jim said aye as well. He's in by phone now. Okay, then I will make a motion to make a part-time conditional offer of employment for part-time employment in the fire department to Jonathan DeVault.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Justin votes yes.
Colner, yes. Okay. I'm going to make a motion to bring all administrative assistants with fiscal and board of trustees in line with the board of trustees pay scale for administrative assistants as published in front of us by Ms. Marshall. Any further discussion? The only thing I'll add to this is I don't have an issue with revisiting part-time pay rates, but I do have an issue with having a part-time administrative assistant at a different pay rate of basically 50% higher than our current starting salary. We can adjust the starting salary in the next meeting or discuss about it in the next meeting, but it's my position that it's this disservice to our current part-time employee. Therefore, that's why I made the motion. Any further discussion? So I'll call for the vote. Colner, yes.
I vote no.
Okay, I'll make a motion. Any other business? Okay, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Colner, vote yes. Want to vote? Vote to adjourn?
Yes.
Yes. We're adjourned. Thank you.